Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Summer is just around the corner, and it's time to stock up on my depleted supplies of vitamin D here in the UK. But I do apologise if you're listening to this podcast in a part of the world where your summer is over and you're entering your winter period. I apologise. And I must admit, I have overdone it this weekend, and I've picked up a nice, or not so nice, depending on your viewpoint, t-shirt tan. But thanks so much for all your messages and your ratings and reviews on iTunes too, because I really do appreciate you guys taking a few seconds out of your day just to support this show. And I really do like to think that this daily tech podcast is proof that technology works best when it brings people together. And each day we have a guest and myself sharing our experiences, and then I invite you to join the conversation listening all over the world, and for you to do the same and share your insights and your experiences. And this is one of many reasons why I'm excited to get today's guest on, which is Sam Chowdhury, and he's the co-founder and CEO at ClassDojo. And get him onto the podcast today because ClassDojo's vision is to help every child on earth get the education that they love. And they think that the way to change education is not from the top down, but from the ground up, by serving teachers, children and families and making education happen every day. And this is the bit that I really love. ClassDojo started as a communication app to help them come together as a community, and is beginning to help them get the educational experiences that they need for their children. But enough from me. This is a great story and you're going to love this one. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to San Francisco so we can speak with Sam Chowdhury, co-founder and CEO of ClassDojo. So, massive warm welcome to the show, Sam. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are
thank you.
And what you do?
Yep. Hi, I'm Sam. I'm the co-founder and CEO of ClassDojo. We think of it as a consumer education company. My co-founder Liam and I are both British. We moved to California a little over 7 years ago to start ClassDojo. And we both had backgrounds in education. So I went to this funky school in my teens, which encouraged us to teach as well as learn. So I ended up teaching for like 20 hours a week through my teens, which was kind of a wild experience. And then ended up teaching after college, worked at McKinsey in their education group in London. And my co-founder Liam had done a bunch of stuff, and most recently had been doing a PhD in computer science focused on technology in classrooms. And we met, and we kind of wanted to do more in education. So we ended up coming out to California. We had a few investors who wanted to back us, and ClassDojo kind of emerged from then. And today, ClassDojo is a communication app that connects teachers and children and families, and it helps them share more often and more positively about what's happening at school and at home. So you think kind of photos and videos, messages, little bits of positive feedback, and that really helps to build a close-knit community around the classroom. Education kind of is an experience that's created by people working together, and so helping the people on the ground doing the work together better is a really important goal for us. It's kind of that foundation of community now has been built in classrooms and homes all around the world. Actually, it's in about 180 countries. We serve tens of millions of kids, and that's been really exciting. We think that the real opportunity for us. And then the vision for me for ClassDojo is really to help every child on earth get an education that they love.
I loved how you mentioned a few moments ago that when you was at school, they taught you how to teach as well as learn. How old were you then? 'Cause it sounds like a fantastic angle.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I mean, I was this from age 13 to the end of school, actually.
Yeah.
So the backstory is I previously, when I was a bit younger, I'd gone to a very small school. This was in Wales. And there was only about 80 kids or something in it. And then when I was a bit older, this next school that encouraged us to teach was about 3,000 kids. And so really, there's a real danger that kids just kind of get lost.
Yeah.
They ended up having this amazing system where they really they encourage you to come in at lunchtimes or after school or take over some of the core kind of curriculum classes. And so we taught small groups and big groups and our own grade level and younger grade levels. And it was a pretty cool experience.
I've recently read that Glossier once told Fortune that 70% of sales come from word of mouth and organic connections. So while Glossier is shaping the future of beauty by leveraging influencers, what quickly struck me is ClassDojo is doing exactly the same in education by leveraging teachers and families. And it's the world's most widely used communication app for pre-K-8 schools. But can you offer an overview for listeners that are just tuning in and hearing about ClassDojo for the first time, exactly what it is and what you're doing differently from all the other solutions out there?
Yeah, no, it's a good one, especially if you don't use it or you don't know about it. So, first, I think most people agree that education is like one of the most important problems that we could solve. Because if we solved it, we'd solve like most of all the future problems we face in the future. And we believe that too. But I think we kind of started with a different point of view to most education companies, and like kind of our point of view is that education isn't really a product that you can build and ship to classrooms. So it's not like an iPhone or like a test version or something. It's more important that we think of it as an experience that gets created every day by like people in millions of classrooms and homes, like all over the country, all over the world. And so if you want to improve it, our view is that like you really need to start like bottom up. Like you need to focus on changing things from the ground up, not from the top down. And so we kind of started by talking to teachers and children and families and just kind of asking them like what would help improve their experience of education. And out of that, what emerged was this idea that, well, we all need to work together well. We need to work together as a community. And so ClassDojo started as initially just with connecting teachers and students and helping them share positive feedback with each other about like skills and values and things they're doing in the classroom. That then expanded to include teachers, children, and families. And so it became, you can think of it as a communication app where these three groups are able to share like just amongst themselves, like moments from the classroom, moments from home, messages, like pictures or videos. So it's kind of all the, I've always been a little bit odd that like kids go away to school for 8 hours a day, then they spend like 8 hours a day at home, and like the two sides just never really talk to each other. And yet it takes kind of a whole village to help people grow up really well, right? And so like having everyone who cares about a kid on the same page and connected to each other in this like little small group is kind of what ClassDojo does today.
Now, ClassDojo's growth has been 100% organic, fueled entirely by word of mouth, from just a handful of teachers in 2011 to 3.5 million users in 2012 to tens of millions of users in 180 countries today. Now, these figures are staggering, especially when you consider that you've not spent a dollar on advertising or marketing, especially in a digital world of Facebook advertising and things. So can you tell me a little bit more about that journey?
Yeah, man, it's been a journey. Like, I think Liam and I moved out here to California, and we'd never lived in the US before. Yeah. And we'd never worked in the US education system. Like, we didn't know that much about it beyond like what we'd read. And so we kind of did what seemed like just a sensible kind of common sense thing at the time, where like we ended up interviewing like a few hundred teachers. And so this was us like cold calling and emailing and just asking like, and we were asking this weird question about like, well, how can we help? Like, what would help you make like a better experience in the classroom, or what would help you teach better or help your kids learn better? And we just kind of listened, right? And we heard things like, well, I want my classroom to be more positive. I want to connect with like the kids and the families in a more positive way. And then we went away for like a few weeks, and we came back with like, it was a dinky little product early on. I mean, as all early products are, we're like embarrassed about it and all that, but it was a little bit useful, right? And we just gave it to teachers, and we said, hey, remember that problem you asked about? We've tried to solve it. And back then ClassDojo was just connecting teachers and students, and we were helping them share kind of positive feedback. And but this was kind of a crazy situation for teachers, right? Where they actually had, I think for some of them for the first time, they had people who'd like listened to them and then gone away and tried to solve one of their problems, then come back. It was almost like this like white glove kind of service. And so I think like the first group of teachers we spoke with were just like delighted. And they used ClassDojo to give us a bunch of feedback on it. Like they made it better. They were so excited that it was getting better for them that they spread it. And so in our first week, we had like 80 teachers using it. in our 5th week, we had like about 12,000 teachers using it. In our 10th week, we had something like 30,000 or so, which is getting to about 1% of all teachers in America. And like, it was kind of cool and amazing, and honestly a surprise for us to see just like the pent up passion for the teachers had there. Where like, it kind of confirmed to me that like, well, like, teachers really do want to things to change and improve, and they want to do the right things for their kids. And so like, this shouldn't have been a revolutionary approach, like to talk to and understand them and empower them, but it turned out to be. And so like, I think what I realized in retrospect was that a lot of companies and a lot of like things that happen in education in general tend to be quite top down, and they get imposed on people in classrooms. Things get sold to schools and pushed out of the classrooms. And we took basically the opposite approach, initially almost by accident, this bottom up one. And it was pretty incredible to see it kind of grow entirely through like love from teachers and later on from kids and then from families as well.
And I love how you've achieved all this success by focusing on your community of teachers, families and students and what they asked for, and never spending a dollar on advertising. But by contrast, you focused on building a platform that actually suits the needs of your target audience. So I've got to ask, I mean, do you think businesses in all industries forget that crucial piece of the puzzle?
I mean, I think a lot of people are really focused on serving their customers, right? I think like when we started out, our investors said this, like, just make something people want. And we took it further. We try to make something people love.
Yeah.
But I do think in general in the world, there's like a big trend that this shift from like top-down decision-making to like ground-up customer focus. And you've seen it a little bit in the enterprise technology world. So you see things like Slack or Dropbox where people pick them up and use them in companies, and then at some point they bubble up to like the IT department who ends up helping like buy it.
Yeah.
But I think like other examples are kind of for me like a little bit in the consumer world, and I think about this for like things like entertainment or hotels where there was a time for entertainment when what you saw on TV was basically decided by a few network execs somewhere, and we all saw the same thing at the same time. Didn't matter if you liked it or not. And in contrast, you've got things like Netflix now, which obsessively serve its customers with exactly what they want. And that if the thing says 98% match, they're like, it's going to be good. You don't even need to question it. And so like, and then there's similar a little bit with hotels where like, there was a time when you traveled to a new city and all the hotels were in a certain part of town and they had certain packages and certain rates, and that was it. And I think you take something like Airbnb where like now you've got far more choice and far more of a like kind of a custom experience. And I think like that to me is what real obsession over your customers looks like, is really serving each customer, each person with like what they really need. And I think in education, there's, to bring it back, there's been companies for a long time that sell things to districts and sell things to schools and all that. But that to me really forgets the real customer of an education. The customer is not the school or the district. The customer are children and families. And like by extension, the people doing the work closest with them, like teachers, parents, students, school leaders, it's the people like on the ground. It's not kind of the providers, right? And so I think it's really important that we remember to serve the customer.
Fantastic points, really.
And kind of like pick the right customer also.
Yeah. And can you also tell me then how you listening to your community has actually enabled you to truly revolutionize the classroom, and how community is equally as important, if not more so, than the technology that builds your business?
Oh, it's really kind of you to say. I won't go so far as to say we've revolutionized the classroom today, but I hope to in the future. We're kind of, I'm proud of what we've done so far. So I think for me, we've got this pretty unusual view from most technology companies in that, we like I said earlier, I don't think we've ever thought of ClassDojo as creating a product and just shipping the product. We think of it really as like we're after creating an experience. And when you're creating experiences, like while the technology really matters, it's the people doing the work and participating in that experience and creating that experience who actually change education, or actually improve education. So like really, it's the people that are the most important part of the education system. And so we think of like the role of technology there, like and the role of the community, like technology's role is really to support and enable millions of these little communities of teachers and children and families, like around millions of classrooms all over the world. And so like really like I'd say the community makes ClassDojo, and like they've like a big role that they've played is like making it right for them from the start. We have this value in the company of we call it learning rather than certainty, and so we're all about like learning fast rather than assuming we're right. And one of the big ways we learn is from our community. Like everyone here talks to teachers and families, and we like understand what's working, what's not working for them, and we serve them. One interesting example, perhaps, is like a couple of years ago, we just built up the part of ClassDojo that allows teachers and families to send messages to each other. This was maybe 2015, I'm forgetting. And they could send messages back and forth to each other. And this was great, right? Because it was like free and instant and fast and like safe and all the things you'd expect. And we went to visit a teacher in the Central Valley here in California, and what we found is that like only half the parents in her class were like responding and active. And we asked the teacher, we're like, well, what's going on with the other half? And she's like, but yeah, those parents don't speak English at home. And so she was sending these messages home in English. They're like immigrant workers and all this kind of stuff, and they care about their kids, right? But they're getting all these messages in English from school, and this teacher doesn't speak their languages. There's 3 or 4 languages, and like Spanish and Vietnamese and things. And we're like, oh my God, like this is a huge oversight, right? Like, and we can like fix this quickly. And then this teacher's alternative was to wait 4 weeks for like a district translator to translate a message. I'm like, well, that's not good. That's going to be out of date. Like, if you got a message 4 weeks later, it just wouldn't help you with anything as a family. And so we went away and built ClassDojo Translate, which is our translation feature, and it works kind of exactly as you'd expect. Like the teacher can send a message in, let's say her language is English, it turns up in the native language on the parent's phone, like let's say it's Spanish. The parent can message back in Spanish, and it turns up in English for the teacher. And of course, it's like all automatic translation. It's not like 100% perfect, but it gets better over time. And we ship this for free to every teacher on ClassDojo because of the feedback from this one teacher in our community. And it's turned out to be tremendously valuable for millions and millions of messages sent and translated across language boundaries now. And that's been pretty epic. So I think that for me, community improves education and improves ClassDojo in service of improving education.
I love that. And as this is a tech show, it'd be criminal of me not to bring technology up. So what role does technology play in the success of ClassDojo, would you say?
Yeah, let me think about it. So like the overall plan for me for ClassDojo is, as I said, we plan to change education from the ground up. And step one of that is bringing these communities together. And then step 2 is like helping each of those communities get access to kind of better learning experiences, right? And so I think like there's a role for technology to make things more efficient, but there's a more interesting, and we're all familiar with that, but I think there's a more interesting role, which is the role of technology to make things more effective. So it's kind of like making new experiences that weren't possible before. So for instance, like one of the roles for me, when I think about like from a product perspective, was like previously teachers and parents would get together kind of once every 3 months for like 10 or 15 minutes for a parent-teacher evening or a parent-teacher conference. But this is odd, right? Because like really as parents, like everyone really cares about their kids. And yet the person that you care most about in the world, you find out about you send them out of the house for 8 hours a day, you find out about their life like 3 months post hoc for like 10 minutes. Whereas in the meantime, you're connected to all these other things you don't really care about every day. But it's difficult, right? Because people have like real lives. They have like jobs. I know parents who work 3 jobs, right? Yeah. And like you can't be there for your kids all the time. And like there's a tremendous amount of guilt and like some shame and things associated with that. And like, that's like a tough situation. And I'm like, well, technology, like sure, we could, get really good at sending homework home on PDFs instead of like in binders in a backpack. And that's certainly useful. But what would be transformative is not like sending more homework sheets home electronically. What would be transformative would be if you could see the moments from your kid's day that you could never have imagined seeing before, that would have been lost forever. So, for instance, one of the uses, one of the things that we built was we called it the story. And so every classroom has a story, and every child has a story on ClassDojo, which is visible to them and their parents and the teacher. And it's basically the stream of like pictures, videos, moments from the school day of like just amazing stuff that they've done. And so one of those little moments seen by the parent at home can just like spark this huge conversation, right? Instead of like, what happened at school today? And then like, and that sounds like a threatening question and you get like nothing and then it doesn't go anywhere. Instead of that, you kind of get, I saw you did that little dinosaur project at school today. I didn't even know you liked dinosaurs. Like, oh my God, like now we can do something with that. And so I think that's one really interesting use is like almost making things possible that weren't possible before, like the human connection that's possible there. Maybe the second thing I think about a lot is, education has a big equity component to it. Like our mission isn't just for like a few kids, it's for every child on earth. Like we want every child to have an experience that they love. And so I think the reach and access that technology can provide, like the scale in a way, is really kind of mind blowing sometimes. I remember Liam, my co-founder, he went on holiday a few years ago now to Bonaire, and it's this island, about 20,000 people off the coast of Venezuela. And I didn't even know where this was, right? I was like, you're going where? And I'd certainly never spoken to a teacher there. None of our team had, but he went there, and because we're kind of nerdy, like we always look up like local teachers or schools when we try and visit when we're away somewhere. And he ended up calling a few schools, and like all of them were using ClassDojo.
Wow.
To connect with their families, and it was just like, oh my God, like this is insane, So like that was a big one, and it kind of blew my mind. And maybe the last thing that's coming to mind for me is like, I think it's like more of an internal thing, but I think it's quite interesting. Is like, I think the way we use technology really enables our internal efficiency. So not many people know we're only like 40 people at ClassDojo, despite serving all these tens of millions. Like it's a very small company. And so when you look at other companies operating services at this kind of scale across all these platforms, like they often have 10 times as many engineers. And so I think we made a good use of like automation in our services, like good test coverage, like lots of interesting cross-platform technologies. And so it's like a different kind of scale that gets enabled there. It's like the ability to scale our team to deliver a product experience that I think is like pretty comparable to some of the very best out there to people around the world. And that's something that wouldn't have been possible like 10 years ago.
That must have really brought it home to you, the kind of impact that you're having there when you visit a part of the world that that you didn't even know existed as such, and then you're there in this remote island, and then you find that people are using your product. It's got to make you feel good and make you realise that you're doing something. You're making a difference there with what you're doing, aren't you?
It was pretty amazing. Liam sent us like pictures back, and it was one of those you pinch yourself kind of moments, because I'm like, wow, like. We talk about a global mission and reaching every child, but it just made it really visceral to see, like, and to see people using it in a place that I'd never even imagined of.
Now, ClassDojo has also recently announced a $35 million Series C round. So the money's great, but can you tell me more about how that funding is actually going to help ClassDojo continue to improve, continue to expand, and continue on this mission that you've set out on?
Yeah, no, super nice to talk about that. I think, like, So I go back to this vision that we talk about of giving every child on earth an education they love. And so there's two parts to that, right? There's like reaching every child and every classroom. And then the second part is like actually improving the experiences the educational experiences that kids are getting. And so I think like we've made some good progress on the first part, right? Like we reach 95% of schools in America now, and I think in the UK it's like a little over half the schools in the country. That we're in another 180 countries. So on the first part, we've definitely got like a ton more work to do, right? Because like it really is important that education is available, like really good one is available for every child. And so so I think we're definitely going to like be investing in reach and growth kind of there some more. But I think the second part is actually really fascinating for me. That like, well, how do you actually improve the learning or educational experiences that children are getting? And so we actually started trying some of this, and it was really just experiments, but trying some of this a few years ago. So I ended up, it was maybe 2016 or so, two or three people on our team wanted to explore this idea, and they'd polled a bunch of our teachers, and they'd asked them this question, and families too. They'd asked them this question. They're like, well, what are the kinds of things that you really want to teach your kids that you don't get a chance to teach, or you don't know how to teach today. You don't know where to start with. Yeah. And it was amazing. Like, we got so much response. One of the big areas that came up was this idea of social and emotional learning, and like especially this idea of like growth mindset, which I don't know if you've come across, but it's this topic which is basically all about like helping kids understand that their brains can grow, and through the right kind of like practice and persistence, you can take on challenges that perhaps you don't feel you can be successful with yet. And so there's a lot more nuance behind it, right? And there's like an amazing TED talk by Carol Dweck, who's a professor at Stanford. But we had a lot of interest from teachers who are like, I really want to teach these, maybe we'll call them, just for the sake of this, like soft skills. So like all these soft skills that don't really get focused on at school, but we all kind of know that they're really important and fundamental to our success in life. And for a lot of teachers, that's the reason they got into teaching. We're like, man, like, I wonder how we could help with this. So we actually were in San Francisco. We went down the road to Carol Dweck's team at Stanford, and we're just like, look, we've got all these teachers who want to teach more about growth mindset. Like, what should we do? And we together ended up creating this set of like little, think of them as like learning experiences, but they're like little animated stories. They weren't lectures. They weren't, big talks. They were stories. Using all of like, the ClassDojo characters. They're these little monsters. And the stories are important because, for younger kids, and they really help like land a kind of an emotional lesson. They move hearts and minds. And we made these stories, and each of the stories ended in a big question. So it didn't really tell you the thing, but you had to like debate it as a class and figure it out. And so the story is only 3 or 4 minutes, but that led to like a 20, 30, 40-minute class discussion. It led to shared language around things like the power of yet, or the idea that your brain has neurons and what that means. And we put these out on ClassDojo, and it was the first time we'd ever done anything like this, right? But we ended up like with more than like 10 million children trying one of these experiences in their classrooms. And then sharing what they were doing home, and then parents talking about it. And so this for me was like, and it was just amazing. It was like, it kind of blew my mind. It was like, it was such an interesting example of how we could take a learning experience that wasn't accessible before and make it more accessible for many more classrooms. I think that's going to be an important trend for us in the years ahead. We did a follow-up series with Harvard on empathy, with Yale on mindfulness. But in the years ahead, like, I think it's going to be important that we start to get good at finding and then like kind of spreading the like really great learning experiences to many more classrooms and homes all around the world. So I think that's kind of what the funding will go towards, those two things.
And I think I should also mention that ClassDojo boasts a net promoter score of 76, which is comparable to the world's most loved consumer brands, including the likes of Nike and Disney. So for business leaders that are way behind and wanting to follow in your footsteps, thinking, what is it these guys are doing? I mean, what is the secret to securing such a high position, do you think?
Oh, man. Oh, man. Maybe we got lucky because there's like so many problems in education. So there's so much room to be solving problems. So like it's always delightful if you do. But yeah, I think like so it's a good question. I don't know if I've got like very good general advice. I mean, one belief that I've always held is that I think your product and even like more so your brand is really kind of like a side effect of your culture. And so you can kind of see how, and like a culture, like I think one of the teams says a lot, it's Pinterest and somewhere else, but like, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And so like, yeah, I think you can have the best brand strategy in the world, but if you don't have the culture that like underpins it, like it's going to seep out in everything that you do. And you can see like, Facebook or Apple or Uber, or you can see how their different cultures reflect in their products, right? And ultimately in their brands as well. And so I think if you really want a brand and need a brand that people love, I think there's no real substitute that I found for just building a culture where like people love their work, and a culture that reflects the things that you want the outside world to see. Like it's important to have that congruence between the internal and the external, and it'll seep out coming through your pores. But there's a million things that go into that. But I think one of the maybe interesting things for us has been starting with clear principles. And we in particular think of our principles as trade-offs, because I think a lot of companies will talk about values, but they don't really talk about what they're giving up to get this nice sounding value, right? And so one of our values I mentioned earlier is learning over certainty. So we are willing to give up certainty in order to learn fast. So what that means is like, we don't dictate things top down. No one does things because Sam said we should do them. But we're obsessed with the other side of it, which is like learning from our customers fast. So we kind of empathy. We like interview and hire for empathy. We like talk to teachers and families and school leaders, and we get like tons of feedback from them every day and every week. And that kind of enables this team of like 40 people to feel like a team of, and hundreds of people. And so like, but like when you hold that as a value of like really learning fast from the people that you're serving, then it almost, it goes back to the earliest days of the company. People can't help but feel like loved and wanted because like you actually love and want to learn from them. It's just the truth. And we relentlessly improve things based on what they're doing. There's many more examples of that, but like that's one of our values. And I think like that's maybe been like one of the most important things we've done is be clear about like our internal principles, because those reflect on our external principles, which is our brand.
And finally then, what's next for ClassDojo? Is there anything else you can share? How are you going to continue to leverage that unique combination of technology and community to continue on that success?
We are like incredibly grateful for just this like an amazing start that we've had, and I'm grateful to like the teachers and children and families and school leaders we work with, and we also have a long way to go, right? Like the vision I spoke about of helping every child on earth get an education they love. Like we're not even through the beginning of that, right? We're right at the beginning of realizing any of that, and so I think like what I'm excited about is that there's this foundation of community that's been built in many classrooms now. And we have a long way to go there because we're not doing it in every classroom, but that's kind of been a great first step. And then the second part of it is building on that foundation to help children get the kinds of education experiences they love at school and at home. And I think that's kind of what's on my mind.
Well, I'm conscious we've covered a lot of ground today, and there's going to be a lot of people wanting to delve in a little bit deeper and find out more information about you guys. So what's the best way for anyone listening to find you online and also reach out and contact your team if they've got any questions about our conversation?
Yeah, I'm admittedly not the most active on Twitter, but you can get me there and I'll respond. It's at Sam Chowdhury. That's CHAUDHARY, and then there's like an annoying underscore under it because I was too late to get the original Sam Chowdhury. Or you can email me on sam@classdojo.com or the team on team@classdojo.com. Yeah.
Well, I love everything that you're doing here and this refreshing approach to education by uniting teachers, children and family, but also the approach and the role of technology in all this by simply using it to support and enable solutions and make them more effective. You seem to be ticking all the right boxes, so I'd love to stay in touch with you and see where this journey leads. But more than anything, just a big thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
What an inspirational story with so many valuable takeaways. Because ClassDojo's growth has been 100% organic, fueled entirely by word of mouth from just a handful of teachers in 2011 to 3.5 million users in 2012 to tens of millions of users in 180 countries today. It's just absolutely inspirational, and they've done all this by focusing on what its community of teachers, families and students ask for. And the most important part and fantastic thing for me is they've not spent a single dollar of advertising. And ClassDojo has built a platform that actually suits the needs of its target audience. And I think we could all learn a thing or two from that story. But please let me know your thoughts. Email techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter @NeilCHughes, Instagram @NeilCHughes and LinkedIn @NeilCHughes too. Because I want you to be a part of this conversation too and continue on this community vibe of our conversation today and what we're building with this tech podcast each day. And there's so much that I loved in today's conversation, but I'm interested in what you've got to say too. So please keep those messages coming in. And the only sad news to end on, of course, is that's it from me, which you may breathe a sigh of relief over. So I will see you bright and early tomorrow, but right now, just a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.